What's up, everyone? Good morning. Welcome to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors along with Hub Arkush and Sean Hammond. It is Wednesday morning, April 26th. We are now less than 36 hours away from the start of the NFL draft. Hub, we had your column drop last evening, your latest column dropped last evening at shawlocal.com. And in it, you mentioned the fact that I believe it was 45 years you've now been doing this, working in the NFL draft sphere, and this may be the most unpredictable first round you've seen. It's just not you saying that. I had SportsCenter on for a bit this morning, heard from a couple different analysts that I respect from ESPN who were saying they're hearing similar things. It's really looking like we're in for a wild night tomorrow, Hub.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that's what's going to happen. A lot of it starts, guys. Quarterbacks are always overrated in the draft. We know that. I mean, every once in a while you find the one guy who, is a once every 10 years guy and everybody wants. But for the most part, quarterbacks are always going to be overrated, but you can't really, or I shouldn't say you can't, but you rarely get a franchise quarterback without taking them in the first round. And so it makes everything else very, very hard to understand and to know. We know who the three best edge rushers are. We know who the two best cornerbacks are. We know who the four best offensive linemen are. But with the four quarterbacks, or it's now five if you add Hooker. There's just no separating them. I do think Bryce Young is going to be the first pick to the Panthers. I think that's been set for a little while. But this latest, I don't even know who did it, but this story that dropped with Will Levis going number 2, that's to be ridiculous. Now it could happen because ridiculous things happen, but it's what makes this so tricky. And then what's interesting is that we've also, I think, published, our knowledge or thoughts about what each team's greatest needs are. And what's interesting is it's almost like every team in the NFL needs edge rushers. And edge rusher, I think, is probably the strongest position in this draft. Most teams want help on the offensive line. The offensive tackles are very deep. The cornerbacks are very deep. And so I do think there's going to be some trades tomorrow night. I don't know where these quarterbacks are going to go, or in what order. But until that sorts itself out, the rest of these position players don't really, we don't really know, where they're going to go and what's going to happen with them.
Sean mentions the Will Levis story. You said number 2. I'm not sure if you saw a different story or if you're referring to the Reddit thing. Sean, I don't know if did you see that?
Yeah, I saw some rumblings about that yesterday.
That was so weird. Someone, it's Reddit, so it's anonymous. Someone posted on Reddit claiming that Will Levis was telling people close to him that he was going to be taking first overall. And, it's a Reddit, it's an anonymous post. You wouldn't think much of it, right? But apparently it caused enough traction, or it gained enough traction, that Will Levis wasn't even on the board in Vegas to be in the discussion for the number 1 overall pick. And it changed his odds. He was on the board, I believe, at plus 500. I had a friend text me, Mike B, who's usually out in the show. Bryce Young went from, I believe, minus 2,000 to be the first overall pick to minus 500. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Like, this is silly. I'd be absolutely shocked if Bryce Young wasn't the first overall pick, Sean. But I think it just speaks to how little clarity, particularly in this top 10, there is.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if somebody else went first overall, but I would certainly not want to bet against Bryce Young at this point. It really feels like that's the direction this is going, and it feels like, from all the reporting we've heard, it seems like the not only that the Panthers coaches and staff like Bryce Young, but ownership seems to be on board with that move. And he's a little bit small for the position, but you can't really argue with his production in college. And then, all that uncertainty, for me at least, starts with number 2 at Houston. Nobody can really put a finger on what the Texans are going to do here. Nick Caserio is kind of a wild card. You look at their roster and clearly you think they got to get a quarterback. They're in prime position to do that. But you know what? In the last couple of days, we've heard a lot of rumblings, and maybe it's nothing that maybe they don't want to take a quarterback. Maybe they would get the best defender. Maybe that's what Coach D'Amico Ryans is looking for as they embark on this rebuild of their own. And there's a lot of first year, second year GMs in that top 10. It's really hard to get a handle on what these guys are going to be looking for.
Oh, you have something there, Hub?
No, go ahead.
I do want to get into that number 2 pick because that's really where it seems the draft begins. But before we do that, I want to get the propers out of the way. If you're joining us live this morning and you're on YouTube, do us a favor, hit a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, anything you can do to help grow the channel. If you're watching on Facebook, you can also thumbs up anywhere, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube. You can drop into the chat here, leave us a question. We'd really appreciate that today. We'd like to make this your show. We're here right before the draft. I feel pretty much talked out about the draft at this point, guys. But you know what I mean? So I'd rather you guys ask us the question, guide the show for us, follow us on Twitter as well. You can find me on Twitter at Kyle Nabors. You can find Sean on Twitter at Sean_Hammond. You can find Hub on Twitter at Hub_Arkush. And of course, you can find all of our content at shawlocal.com. Got a lot coming for you over the next, few days here with the draft getting going tomorrow in Kansas City, all the way through the weekend. But as I was saying, guys, you start looking at it, and the rumblings have persisted, and in fact, seem to have grown a little stronger about Houston at number 2. I'm not sure if that's just misdirection, Hub, or if there's a legitimate chance that Will Anderson could be the pick at number 2, because that really would change the top of the draft.
Well, yeah, that would really change it. And I do think that Houston could take a quarterback at number 2. I just can't believe it would be Will Levis. To me, I think Anthony Richardson is going to be the best quarterback from this draft. He's the most talented. Everybody agrees with that. He's the least experienced. You can't really debate that. But to me, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. I'm sure you're tired of hearing it. You got to take the best player available. And Anthony Richardson, to me, has the highest upside of these 4 quarterbacks. There's no question that Bryce Young was the best college quarterback, and that if he was 3 inches taller, everybody would be saying it's the done deal. That's the only thing that's holding him back. CJ Stroud is probably, in some respects, it's weird that a kid from Ohio State could be the least known of the 4, but there's been so much talk about Levis that I guess Stroud is the guy, but he was the second best college quarterback. And so, I think the thing with the Texans is they don't know if they can get a quarterback at 12, and they know they can get either the best or the second best at 2. And I think there was a lot of thought until this last week or so that they were going to get one of the top 4 at 12. They do need a quarterback, but it isn't their greatest need like it is for some of the other teams in the top 5. And so that's what's holding everything up right now. But I will tell you this, if the Texans take a quarterback at number 2, I don't think it's going to be Will Levis. That just doesn't make any sense to me. We all know what the curiosity is and what the question marks are about his performance. And some of it wasn't his fault. Some of it was the team he's with. But interestingly enough, we're based here in Chicago. We know a lot of the people following us are Bears fans. And this goes to the Justin Fields thing with me, is that everybody assumes that what is wrong with Justin Fields, if you agree that things are wrong with him, I'm not sure that there are, is everybody else's fault. It's the lack of receivers. It's the offensive line. It's this, it's that. No, it's Justin Fields' fault. And with Will Levis, what happened in college, no, he didn't play with as good a talent as the other 3 quarterbacks did. He didn't play at one of the schools that contends for a championship every year. But at the end of the day, what Will Levis did is what Will Levis did. It's not what the other players did. And that's how you analyze these prospects. And that's why he's the number 4 quarterback, or some people even have Hooker going 4 and him going 5. And this thing, as you just pointed out, Kyle, it's a betting thing, and betting is real. But for whatever reason, the betting line changed. And so people started talking about him going number 2, but he is not the second best prospect. And I just don't see how that could happen.
I don't think you can ignore, the players around these guys, though, at the same time, Hub. I mean, there's truth to the fact that Will Levis wasn't playing with the same type of talent that, say, a Bryce Young is playing with at Alabama. And that's why it's difficult it's a little bit more challenging to evaluate those guys who don't come from, those NFL producing machines like Alabama and Georgia. So I wouldn't necessarily throw that out the window. I mean, you can still look at at what Will Levis, at the arm talent and the projectable things. And I think you can make the argument that he should be one of those top 4 or 5 quarterbacks taken. I wouldn't completely I wouldn't completely put everything that went wrong at Kentucky on his shoulders. He was also dealing with a new offensive coordinator and, lost his top receiver from the year before. I think that stuff really matters.
Yeah, and I apologize if I misspoke, because you absolutely can't ignore that. I'm not suggesting that by any means. I'm just saying I don't think that's the reason he was the number 4 quarterback. The reason he was, until the last week or so, hands down the number 4 quarterback is because he had some injury issues. He makes mistakes. He tries to make plays that he can't make. He does have all the physical talent that you want, but in playing a couple of years there, he did not produce or perform at the level that Stroud and Young did, and that's why he's been below. And then there's Richardson, who only had 1 year as a starter, but I don't think anybody argues that he's not the best athlete, that he's not the best physical prospect. And I know when I'm taking or thinking, well, I've never been thinking about it. When I'm evaluating 21 or 22-year-old kids, I've never had to draft one. I want the best athlete. I want the guy with the most talent. And then with these pro days and with these private, conversations and meetings that teams have, you get a sense for, how smart these guys are. There's all these new measurements now that various groups are putting together as to how you can measure a guy's mental aspect for the position. I don't know how real that is or not, but until you get to know these kids, you don't really have a sense for how they're going to develop. The one thing that is absolutely measurable is their athleticism and their physical performance. And so unless you have reasons to doubt that these kids can evolve and can develop, that's kind of, I think, the order you have to take them in. And that's why, Levis is the 4th best quarterback in this draft. He shouldn't go after Hooker. There's reasons that the 25-year-old who also had some injury issues wasn't being talked about all that much until the last week or two. But I think that, for 3 months, Levis was number 4. I don't think in the 3 days before the draft, he suddenly goes from number 4 to number 2. That's the only issue that I have with it.
Some good conversation on the quarterbacks. Didn't expect to be discussing Will Levis so quickly, so much here early. I thought we'd get the Reddit stuff out, but it's incredible to me, just the lack of clarity when I like I said, I'm 99% certain we're seeing Bryce Young at number 1, but after that, those quarterbacks get really weird. But what I originally brought up there was, what happens if Will Anderson goes second? Because my assumption, Arizona needs some help on the offensive line, but there's not really someone to take at number 3. Arizona needs a lot of help on defense. And my kind of assumption over the last few months that the quarterbacks would be going, or ever since the Bears trade at least, that quarterbacks would be going number 1 and number 2, and then Arizona would quickly jump up there and say, gladly take Will Anderson. But if Houston was to take Will Anderson, then you're sitting there with 3 quarterbacks still on the board. Arizona's not taking a quarterback. To me, it gets weird really quickly, because Arizona's in a spot where I would think they'd probably want to trade out of it.
Well, especially if you're not taking a quarterback, because what value. The Bears have proven what value you can get, with a first pick or a third pick or a second pick. And that brings us back to where we started, which is why it's kind of fun that there are so many unknowns right now, 24 hours before this starts, or 30 hours, whatever it may be. But there is at least one team, maybe 2 teams, that if nobody but Young goes number 1, and then suddenly there's a couple other positions picked at 2, 3, and 4, somebody's going to come up and make a deal for a quarterback, and which team gets to make that trade. And again, as the Bears have demonstrated, you can get a lot for that trade. You can get a lot of assets that make it much better, or not much better, but much easier to get better quicker by trading that pick. And so, these top 5 picks and what happens there, that's going to have a lot of impact on where every team ends up, particularly the Bears in some respects. But there's no question that until at least 3, if not 4 of those quarterbacks go, then we're not going to get off the trade market. And by the way, the edge rushing position is so deep, with the top 3, maybe even 4 or 5, that it's quite possible that a team's going to come up to get one of them too. I don't think so on the offensive line because, I like Paris Johnson the most, but it doesn't matter. There's 4 guys, maybe even 5 guys that could be similar prospects. The cornerbacks, really Witherspoon and Gonzalez are ahead of everybody else. But then, there's another, 2, 3, 4 guys that are going to go in the first round. So I think it is the quarterbacks and maybe the edge rushers that drive the likelihood of trades in the first round happening on the clock, tomorrow night.
Yeah, Kyle, to go back to your scenario, if Houston takes a defender, I mean, you're looking at the Cardinals there at number 3, with a first-year GM who I would imagine would love to pick up, an extra first-round pick a year from now. If, say, the Titans or even Washington or somebody down there wants to move up and get a CJ Stroud, I think that would be, if I'm Houston, that might be a perfect scenario because you're sitting there at number 3 and you don't need a quarterback. And if Houston goes defender, they're serving that possibility up there on a platter for you to trade back. And I could absolutely see them doing that.
Absolutely. Gary checking in. Gary Ross says talking about Arizona, they may go Tyree Wilson to replace JJ Watt. That's definitely a possibility. There's been a lot of buzz about Tyree Wilson. I do think that in that scenario, if Will Anderson was gone, I love Tyree Wilson. I think they'd have to trade down guys. The other thing I want to get to here quickly, and we can discuss both of them. Alan put this in here. Alan Dunlap checking in. Rumor today that Paris Johnson will go number 3 to Arizona. Does that mean someone like Carter will drop? Before we get to Carter, let's talk about Paris Johnson because I've seen those rumors as well. Hub, you love him. I love him. I think he's worthy of the number 9 pick for the Bears. I think edge rusher is a much bigger need for the Bears, but I would be okay with that pick. With that being said, do you see Paris Johnson possibly going as high as number 3?
It's awfully high. He is a really good prospect. But when you're talking about these top 3, top 5 picks, you're talking about guys who were in competition at one point or another for best player in the draft. And I don't think Paris Johnson is that sure a thing. When you talk about the Bears, I don't understand, and I'm in a very small minority, because I realize that a lot of the quote experts believe that the Bears' greatest need is offensive line. I don't get it. First of all, I'm not drafting a right tackle with a top 10 pick. I'll draft a left tackle there, but not a right tackle. The Bears have a left tackle. And I think it would be a big mistake to move him to right tackle. Paris Johnson is going to play left tackle. I just don't see that the Bears' need on the offensive line is anywhere close to their need at edge rusher. They need 2, maybe 3 edge rushers. They need at least one big one. They had the worst pass rush in the NFL last year. So now what is interesting though is that I have seen some people, move. I'm sorry, guys. I'm doing 3 things at once here, but I have seen, some people suggest that the kid from Alabama won't even be the number 1 edge rusher. That the other kid goes first, and that they switch spots. It's possible, but there are going to be 2 edge rushers in the top 6 or 7 picks. I think there's no question about that.
Yeah, Will Anderson is, on paper, I think he's the safe pick of the 2. But I imagine NFL GMs love the length that Tyree Wilson brings. He's got those really long arms and that huge frame. And he showed that he can get to the quarterback in college. And he was doing it without maybe the talent level that Will Anderson had around him. So, I could certainly see that. I think Will Anderson is the safer pick. If you want a guy who you can reliably say is going to be a very good NFL football player, that's the guy.
How similar, when we're talking about those 2 players, really quickly, I'm looking back on last year's draft. We had Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson go 1 and 2 overall. Do you feel like it's a similar scenario, you guys, where going into the draft last year, I thought Hutchinson was a safer pick and Walker had the higher ceiling?
I think a similar comparison. I don't think those 2 were quite the prospects that these 2 are. Will Anderson is the number 1 athlete on a lot of lists, and I had him going number 2, for 3 months, and finally just changed yesterday because I just don't know, what they do about a quarterback at 12. and I think they take a real risk if they don't get one at 2. But I will tell you this, guys, the size and athleticism of Tyree Wilson, it is a question mark. I mean, Anderson, definitely the better college player. A lot of folks have him number 1 on the board this year, but I will still be surprised if Anderson doesn't go ahead of Wilson. But I wouldn't be shocked, and I wouldn't say it was a mistake if whoever decides they've got to get the best edge rusher took Wilson. His size and athleticism are unique. I mean, you don't see this often, and and then you look at Texas Tech. It's not quite the factory, that certainly Alabama is, or some of these other schools, and so he does still have room to develop, and there's still more things you want to see. But when you look at the physical specimen, I don't know how you pass Tyree Wilson.
Sorry, I'm thinking if I want to follow up on that or if I want to move on here, because I really love Will Anderson. I just think the kid is going to be an absolute stud. He's just, everything lines up for him to be a solid NFL player. But all right, let's move over here. Mike Gibson with a question. I'm liking Darnell Wright more and more. I just don't love that he's only a right tackle, but he was awesome on the athletic charts and gave up 0 sacks last year in the SEC. Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. There's been, a considerable amount of buzz about Darnell Wright here over the last week or so. What are you guys thinking about him? I'll start with you.
Well, Mike, I don't know if you're a Bears fan, but I mean, if you're talking about what the Bears do, then Tyree Wilson is a great pick because you can probably trade down if somebody wants to make a deal and still get him at 14, 15, 16, and maybe add a couple extra picks. And right tackle is what you need, so the limitation doesn't bother me at all. I am really concerned that they decide they're going to move the kid, to right tackle and draft a left tackle. And now he's not the player on the right side that he was as a rookie on the left side. So, if you're talking about the Bears, then I think that's a real good call. I think most teams going in aren't looking to move a guy from his college position to his pro position, and if he didn't play left tackle in college, but you think he was a right tackle who's going to be a better left tackle in the NFL, I'm not sure what you really base that on. I think you should be picking either a left or a right tackle. And as much as I'd rather not use the 9th overall pick on a right tackle, if he's the best player on the board, I think that's what you got to do.
Yeah. Of all these tackles that we're looking at as potential first round tackles, I mean, I think Darnell Wright probably fits that right tackle position better than all of them. He played a little bit of left tackle too in college, but he played his best football at right tackle. Last year, first team All SEC at right tackle. As far as like getting a guy and plugging him into your lineup at a spot where you have a big hole on your roster, that Darnell Wright would absolutely fit that mold for you. And then you wouldn't have to move Braxton Jones out of that left tackle spot. I think that would be a fine scenario. I would be, if the Bears did that, I would see their reasoning there and be pretty content with that pick at number 9. Or as Hub's saying, even if they do move back a little bit.
I feel like number 9 is probably a little rich for Darnell Wright. But definitely in a trade back scenario into the middle of the first round, 14, 15, 16. That seems like a perfect spot for Darnell Wright. Alan with a follow-up question here about if Anderson and Wilson, Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson are top 2 edge rushers are Smith, Nolan Smith, and Lucas Van Ness still climbing up boards. Should Bears take one at number 9, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I do. Hub and I were just talking about this yesterday out at Hallis Hall. I feel like edge rusher is absolutely their biggest need. It would kind of depend on who else is on the board at other spots, but I wouldn't have a problem with them taking a Lucas Van Ness or Nolan Smith. Looking at the potential of those two guys as pass rushers, that's clearly your biggest need. I have no problem with them, projecting a guy out and taking a guy at their biggest position of need, without, knowing the board and who else is there. That would obviously change some things, but those are two guys who seem to have high ceilings, and I think you could get excited about either one of those guys if you're a Bears fan.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Nolan Smith. I just wish he was bigger. I mean, he's basically 6'2", 235, 240, and to be a premier edge rusher in the NFL, dealing with those left tackles or even on the other side, that's a lot of size and strength that you're giving up. And then Lucas Van Ness is a great football player. He's just a player without a position. I don't know if he is an edge rusher. I keep coming back to the same thing that makes no sense to me. I don't care what Iowa's, rules are and how they decide who gets to start. But for a guy who never started a game, who's now going to be a top 10, top 15 pick as an edge rusher, it's a little risky. But Van Ness is a really good football player, and I think he may turn out to be a great edge rusher. He may end up playing inside. He's done it all, and he can play anywhere on the defensive line. And by the way, the Bears have needs up and down the defensive line. Yeah, edge rusher is their number one need, but they got to get better at tackle too. So, now the only thing now is that we're talking about guys where number 9 is a little rich for him. If you can make a deal and you can get either one of those guys, get Van Ness or Smith. I probably would take Van Ness over Smith because of his size. And I would take either one of them at, let's just pick a number, 15, comfortably. But I wouldn't feel great about doing it at 9.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hub. Those, like we were talking with Darnell Wright, those are two guys who would be prime guys if you move back a little bit, if you do trade back out of that number 9 spot.
The thing with Lucas Van Ness, that tied in with the Bears directly, and I know this is a different front office, but anytime I think about high draft picks and small sample sizes when it comes to starting or playing at the college level, I'm going to go back to the Mitch Trubisky experience, where you're talking about a guy that had a very small sample size and you took him high. And I listen, they're completely different players, different positions. But what I'm driving at there is just the fact that you're really, really having to project with a player like Lucas Van Ness. And you saw, Bears fans have seen in recent years how quickly that can go wrong when a guy has high potential. And this is really, where it comes down to, guys. We talk about a guy like Jalen Carter. I know a lot of people have had questions about him, so let's get into that now. There's a wide range of possibilities of what's going to happen on Jalen Carter on draft night. And you got to factor in the off-field stuff a little bit. But where I'm going with this is when, I guess Jalen Carter is maybe not the best example because he's an extraordinary talent on the field. But I guess what I'm driving at here, Hub, is how do you balance that? How do you balance upside, off the charts potential with wanting to make sure you have a solid floor at the number 9 pick?
Well, that gets back to these pro days and these visits and spending time with these young men and getting to know them a little bit better and getting comfortable with their maturity, getting comfortable with their knowledge, getting comfortable with their football knowledge, which is very different from being smart or being dumb. And I look at Lucas Van Ness, and I have no doubt that he's going to be a good NFL player. But at number 9, you want a Pro Bowler. You want a blue player, as Ryan Poles would put it. You want a great player. And, I don't know if he has the right size to be a great player at any of the positions that he's going to play at. I think he's going to be good. I think he could very well end up on a good team and be a difference maker at times. But I worry too much. You see, it's interesting because everything we know a little bit more about him because he's local. He's an impressive young man. I'm not worried about the mental aspects like I am on Jalen Carter. I'm not worried that he has the work ethic. I'm not worried that he will get better. He is going to get better. I just don't know if he is the right size and strength and athleticism to be special as an edge rusher. He's not big enough to be special inside, but he could play inside. And that's, to me, the only, that's not even negative, but it's the only thing that makes me nervous about him, I guess is the way to put it.
He has the length, that you would want in that position, but I can't remember what it was exactly. I think his bench press was like 17, and like, obviously there's a difference between bench pressing a bunch of weight and being out there on the football field and having to use that weight in a in a way that's relevant to the game. But that is a little concerning, especially when you look at what some of his peers at that edge rusher spot were putting up.
If he's going to be an edge rusher, he may be a great one at 6'5", 270. You're fine with that. But if he's going to play inside, he's got to put on 30 pounds of muscle, and I don't know if that's going to happen.
Alan, with an interesting question here. How many starters do you think the Bears need to get out of the 2023 draft, Sean?
I would say, I don't necessarily think you need to get a ton of starters. I think you need, if you hit on 3 of your top 4, I think you're pretty happy with that. If you get 3 starters in those top 4 picks in the top 64, you can go into this with the mentality that at least one of them might not work out. That happens every year. And while, you want to hit on all 4 of those guys, it's no guarantee. I think if you get 3 starters in those top 4 picks, you're pretty happy. And then, if you find one later, it's always sort of a crapshoot on day 3. And you might find somebody there, but I don't know that you can expect to.
Guys, this is something that I kind of mentioned in my column today because I wasn't really thinking about it in these terms. Everybody's talked about having 4 picks in the top 64, and that's great. But the reality is that you've only got 2 picks in the top 53. You're at 9, and then you don't pick again. Is it 53 or 55? I keep forgetting which number it is.
53.
Yeah, but there's going to be 52 players chosen before the Bears make their second pick, and yet we're all, you got to get 4 or 5 starters. You got 4 picks in the top 64, and you can. And what's interesting about this draft, again, this was part of what I wrote today or yesterday that's in the paper today, is that in this draft, from most of the GMs and scouts that I'm talking to, there is a consensus of sorts that there are really no more than maybe 20 first-round picks. And then what happens is that when you start going to that next group, that 21 to 50, you've got a bunch of guys, probably a couple dozen who are going to prove to be better players than those first 20 picks. So you can get really good talent in the middle and late second round, early in the third round. You may get special players. But when we talk about how many starters are the Bears going to get, you're only going to get 2 of the top 55 guys on your list, and you hope that they're both special. And the second one doesn't come until 53, so it's hard to do. I would think with 10 draft picks and in a rebuild, and the likelihood or possibility that they're going to make another trade or 2, that they would like to come out of this draft with at least 4 or 5 starters.
I would say I'll follow that up with one. I mean, this team needs a lot of depth. Like, it's been an issue for 3 to 4 years now. It's it's a rebuild. You understand that right now, but they really need to build some depth. I would say by the end of this season, I think the Bears will need to have found starters at offensive tackle, somewhere on the defensive line at edge rusher, and I really think they need to find a cornerback in this draft. While Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon are good, you still need depth at that position. I don't think that's going to be a guy taken on the first round, but I could definitely see them taking using a second or third round pick on a cornerback hub.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have got to get at least one more corner who's capable of starting, or at least becomes their number 3. And that is one of the 3 positions that is the strongest in this draft. And that is one of the positions that is going to have a lot of talent sitting there at the bottom of the second and top of the third round. And so that could be a way they go with one of those 3 picks. The other position that intrigues me about this draft, I don't remember the last time I saw a deeper group of tight ends. And, I like Cole Kmet a lot. I think he could really start to emerge this year or reach his peak this year. And I hope that they re-sign him. But it's like we were just saying, you need 2. You'd like to even have a third. And there are going to be some tight ends available at 64, at 61, whatever, who could turn out to be among the best players in this draft. And so that's another position that I think if we're talking to Bears fans here, if you're interested, start looking some of those kids up, because there's some really good ones as receivers. There's only one really good blocker, but I don't care about blockers. Let the offensive line block. I mean, you want your tight end to be able to block, but what you're looking for at tight end are unique receivers. And if you get a second one, and Kmet, takes another step this year, that's a big help to Justin Fields. And that's, again, what appears to be the priority for the Bears is let's help Justin Fields get better.
Sean, what do you think about the tight end position?
I agree. I like the addition of Robert Tonyan. I agree that the tight end position in this draft is deep, and there are a lot of good guys, especially first, second, third round potential picks. I don't know if I see the Bears doing that, especially after adding Robert Tonyan, just because you got two guys who I think you can feel pretty good about, and it could be your starters, depending on how many tight ends you got out there. And then, Chase Allen was an interesting addition last year, who we never really got to see. The tight end out of Iowa State spent most of the season on the practice squad. There's a reason they're keeping him around, but I wouldn't be surprised if they draft somebody on day 3 at that tight end spot.
Yeah, guys, the only thing I would mention there is the reason that I'm focused on it is A, just because I think some of these kids are great prospects, but B, Tonyan is pushing 30, and Kmet's going to be a free agent after this year. And this is all part of the consideration for Ryan Poles. I think they could be fine with Kmet and Tonyan this year, but I don't know what happens after that.
We also are assuming that Cole Kmet continues to progress. We talk all this time, I feel like every time we talk about the tight end position, we try and stress the fact that tight ends take a long time to develop in the NFL. We finally felt like we saw them in the second half of the season with Cole Kmet. I believe he ended up with 7 touchdowns, I believe.
7 or 8. Yeah.
7 or 8. But let's say he regresses. Let's say that was just a hot streak and he goes back to what we saw the first half of the season or his second season. Are you extending Cole Kmet then? Sean, what do you think?
I would think that they're going to want to try to extend him before the season. If they like what they've seen from him and they want to lock him up, I think a Cole Kmet extension is kind of a no-brainer. I would think that Cole Kmet would love to continue to be a Chicago Bear. If you do go into the season, I mean, I feel like there's no reason to think that he would regress in that manner, or that his touchdown numbers would be down again. And yeah, I mean, it did help that he had that hot streak in the middle of the season. What did he have? 5 touchdowns in 3 games or something like that?
Yeah, it was Cole Kmet ever going to find the end zone again? And then all of a sudden you couldn't keep him out of it.
But you know what? Those are still touchdowns. They're all the same in the stat book. So, at the end of the day, yeah, he finished with 7 or 8 or whatever it was. I would think they're going to want to try to get something done before the season.
Guys, I hesitate because I'm not sure how to say what I'm about to say without causing trouble. And I don't want to cause trouble because there is no trouble. But I have it from a number of sources that not everybody on the Bears offense is convinced that Justin Fields is the answer. Not that they're negative about him, not that they think, that he's a bad football player, not that they don't like him, not that his leadership, just that by the way he played this year, that they're not sure that he can be, their franchise quarterback. And I have it from a really good source that one of those people may be Cole Kmet, who felt that there were times when, Fields just couldn't or didn't get him the ball. And so, if that's what he's thinking, depending on what happens this year, if he's right, or even if he's not right, but that's what he's thinking, it could make him a little harder to sign. And it is worth noting that, these guys are all people just like the rest of us, and they have their opinions too, and not everybody on the offense is convinced that they have their franchise quarterback yet.
That was a bit of news there where I'm trying to figure out how to quite unpack that. Sean, what are your thoughts, I guess, initially?
My thoughts. Yeah, no, that's an interesting tidbit, Hub, that you just mentioned. Last year was difficult for this offense. It was it took them some time to get into that rhythm and to find what was working. And yeah, you look at what Justin Fields did last year, you want to see more in that passing game. Obviously, what he did with his legs was electric and fantastic. And that was everything you want to see there. But he needs to be able to throw the football a little bit more in the modern NFL. And it wouldn't surprise me if some of his teammates were frustrated by the way that offense went, especially early in the season.
You look at a guy like Cole Kmet too, who, as I was saying, before that hot streak, there were some questions about like his long-term position with the Bears or his status with the Bears. I see Sam Rush checking in, asking me if I was tripping. But before that hot streak, there were people that were calling Cole Kmet maybe not a bust, but underwhelming. And we were getting to the point where Cole Kmet is getting close to getting paid, right? He is looking for that extension now. So if there's certainly, these are human beings, as you're saying, Hub. If Cole Kmet's like, I need the damn ball so I can get paid, that does start to factor in.
Yeah, I don't know if it's about money. I don't know if it's just about being the best player you can be.
Right.
But if we do our jobs well, one of the most important things that we have to get information about is what players think about their teammates. How comfortable they are with the way the offense is running, how comfortable they are with the way that Justin Fields is making decisions and throwing the ball. And as I said, this is just from a source who I know, is close to Kmet. We were talking one night, and he was telling me about some of Kmet's frustrations with times when he thought there were plays to be made and either the right decision wasn't made or the best throw wasn't made. And again, let me be clear on this. He is not, I'm not saying that Cole Kmet is negative on Justin Fields, not at all. As far as I've heard and what I know, everybody on that team respects Justin Fields as a teammate, as a leader, his work ethic, that's all there. We're just talking about the physical ability that you either have or you don't. And Justin Fields, let's be honest, has not shown enough of it yet for the Bears to commit and say, this is the guy we're going to win a Super Bowl with.
I think, we got to remember we're talking about a 3-win football team. I think every pass catcher may have been upset at some point. I think everybody on that offensive lineman may have been upset at some point by the way things were going last year because they weren't winning football games. You look at the struggles Chase Claypool went through. He probably felt, similar ways about the way that season was going. And so, I could believe, Hub, that some of those guys were maybe upset. But, at the end of the day, these guys got to work together to get this thing figured out. And it's you got 11 guys on that offense. You're never going to point the finger at one guy.
I think this goes back to the conversation that we've had really since the season ended and we started looking ahead to 2023, guys, which is the Bears have to find out exactly what Justin Fields is this year. This is the make or break time. I'm not saying that after this year they're automatically going to move on for Justin Fields, but you got to put the talent around him to see if this kid can take that next step, right?
Guys, I mean, we're talking about the Bears rebuilding. They had the worst passing offense in the NFL last year. He's the quarterback. It's not all his fault. There's no question it's not all his fault. But you can't just assume that getting him, better targets and better blocking is gonna make him the answer at the position. He has to do the things to become that himself. And this is the year. Last year was his first full season as a starter. Anybody who thought that we were going to see who he is in 100% of Justin Fields wasn't being realistic. You're absolutely right, Kyle. This is the year. This year, there are no excuses. They clearly have upgraded the wide receiver position. They're going to upgrade or try and upgrade the offensive line. We know that. It's just what rounds they do it in. And so the question is, how is Justin Fields going to upgrade his own performance? That's what they're looking for. And this gets back to what I think we were talking about near the beginning of this visit, is the mental aspect. That's what it's really about. Does he have the God-given gifts? Does he see the football field the way that special quarterbacks do? That we don't know. We haven't seen that yet. He's got all the arm strength you need, all the athleticism you need. We don't know if he has the accuracy, and this is absolutely the year that they have to figure that out, because that's what the trade was all about. They are really well positioned to draft a quarterback in the first round next year. They've already got 2 first-round picks. They might even be able to add another. They can do all kinds of things, and I believe that's why they did it. You're never going to go wrong with 2 first-round picks, but they have the pieces they need if they do have to get another quarterback next year to do it now. And so that 2023 is going to decide on what Justin Fields' future is in the NFL. Whether it's as the Bears franchise quarterback, somebody else's franchise quarterback, or whether it's not somebody he's ever going to be. But this is the year that they have to find that out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There is so much athleticism and raw talent from Justin Fields, Sean. It's so exciting to watch at times, but there needs to be a bit more consistency from him this year. And I guess when I say a bit more, I mean a lot more. In terms of what you want to see now, I guess, is what we're talking about here is you're trying to decide, is he an elite quarterback? Can he reach that elite quarterback status, a franchise quarterback status? And you're seeing some of that athleticism now. I think in the passing game, Sean, you're looking for those type of throws where you go, how the hell did he make that throw, right? Like on a much more consistent basis than we saw from Justin last year.
I mean, I think he made, there are examples of throws like that he made that stick out in your mind.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's why you're excited. That's why Bears fans can get excited about what Justin Fields could be, because a lot of the second half of that season, and especially in December when Darnell Mooney's hurt and Chase Claypool was hurt for 3 or 4 games, whatever it was, he's throwing to Equanimous St. Brown, Dante Pettis, and Byron Pringle. And, no disrespect to those guys, but, your top receivers are hurt. You're not playing with your number 1 guys. And it's really hard to put together any sort of NFL passing game when your top 2 wide receivers are out. And so I think that's why we saw Ryan Poles make such a, getting DJ Moore was such a huge part of that trade. And it was prioritized because he realizes that Justin needs more weapons. And I don't think you can discount the lack of talent that was around him at that wide receiver position last year.
Guys, there's another piece about Fields that is kind of interesting with where the NFL is going right now. We know how, running backs have been devalued in the draft and I guess even free agency. And a lot of it is because, yes, you can find good ones, in the middle or later rounds, and you don't find a lot of great quarterbacks in the middle or later rounds. But the other reason, and maybe even the bigger reason for some teams that they've been devalued, is because they get hurt. And if Justin Fields is going to keep rushing for 1,100 yards a year, he's going to keep getting hurt, and you can't have that with your quarterback, because whoever your second quarterback is, he's not going to be a franchise quarterback. And so, the greatest asset of Fields is that I believe he's the best running quarterback in the NFL right now. And I think that's a good thing. But if he's going to keep getting hurt and he has to stop, can he be one of the best passers in the NFL? Have we seen anything to suggest that Justin Fields is going to be one of the best throwing quarterbacks in the NFL? That's what the Bears have to learn this year. We already know he can run. We know he can be extremely beneficial when he runs. But can he become one of the better pass throwers in the NFL? And we still need to see a lot about that. And you have to worry about keeping him healthy.
I think there's there's reasons to be optimistic that he can reach that level. Yes, we have to see more. I 100% agree that 2023 season, is all about Justin Fields taking that next step. If he does or doesn't do that, that's pretty much going to make or break your season and your future moving ahead. But I feel like you can be optimistic that he's shown some of those signs, especially playing with a really bad 3-win football team last year. There's reasons for optimism in that regard.
I think Bears fans should feel really good about the direction of Justin Fields. I think there have been enough signs to show that he can be that passer. I don't know if he can do it consistently, but I think that the tools are there. I think it comes down to seeing the field. Like, I think the accuracy is there. I think it's just processing, and I'm not sure what it takes at the NFL level for that to click. Mike Gibson had a comment in here, and you look. I mean, the Bears had the number 1 overall pick. If they weren't interested in developing Justin Fields, they probably would have held on to that number 1 pick. But they traded it, and they got a wide receiver in DJ Moore in the process. And Mike Gibson had put in here. Took Josh Allen a few years to figure it out as well. I think Justin takes another step this year with better protection and weapons. I mean, you look at the way things started with Josh Allen in Buffalo, a lot of athleticism, a lot of raw talent, a lot of turnovers. And as they saw the progression, Buffalo started to buy in. You saw him make a trade for Stephon Diggs. I'm not saying that's the same thing you're going to see with Justin Fields, but I do genuinely feel like Josh Allen is the best comp in terms of the progression you want to see for Justin Fields. Hub.
Well, listen, guys, here's the good news about where Justin Fields is at right now. Ryan Poles has answered the question as to what he thinks.
Yeah.
He believes that Justin Fields is a better prospect than any of the top 5 quarterbacks in this draft. That doesn't mean they won't take one in the 6th or 7th round, but and by the way, that's where I believe Tom Brady was in the 6th round. It can happen. But the point is that the Bears management believes that Fields is a better prospect than any quarterback who's going to be drafted high this year. And I agree with that based on what I've seen so far. Again, these quarterbacks are always overdrafted, and that they need one more year to find out. And so I think they are on the right page with this, and I agree with Sean. I've seen enough from Fields to be excited about the possibilities. I guess I disagree a little bit about the accuracy issue. I'm very concerned about his accuracy. He's been accurate sometimes, and other times I've seen him miss throws he shouldn't miss. But all young quarterbacks do that, and that's what the development is about. We know he has the physical ability to get it down. But if he isn't winning games for you, if he isn't winning games in the 4th quarter for you by the middle of this season or by week 12 or week 13, then you got to start to worry. And if it hasn't happened by the end of the year, then you got to pull the trigger, because you're not every year going to be in a position to get one of the best quarterbacks in the draft.
You know what would help Justin Fields make those throws we're talking about and have a little more time back there is a starting right tackle. To bring us back to the draft conversation,
or as Hub had been beating the table for at least a month now, a pretty damn good running back at number 9, right, Hub?
I just think I have no problem, based on what the Bears have to do now, with everything being about finding ways to make Justin Fields better. I don't think there is a better way to make Justin Fields better than get him the best running back, not only in the draft, but a kid who could become one of the best running backs in the NFL. And that's why I'm so high on Bijan Robinson. I wrote this last week, I think, and it's not just, trying to get people, to respond. It's true. I've watched a lot of tape of Robinson, and the player I keep seeing is Walter Payton. I mean, the size, the style, the ability. He's an outstanding receiver. He's an outstanding route runner. He's a strong blocker. And anybody you talk to at Texas will tell you he's a good kid. He's going to be a leader. He's not somebody you ever have to worry you're going to have trouble with. And I still think he's going to be there at 9. And I would love if the Bears did it. I don't think they're going to, although I've heard some things from, some people with the Bears this week that give me a little more, hope that maybe they would. But I will tell you this: if he's there at 9 and they don't take him, the Eagles are going to take him at 10. That I'm convinced of. And so, we'll see what happens.
I think Robinson's the key there, Hub, that you mentioned, at least in terms of like him going high in the draft is that receiving ability that you mentioned there. You watch some of his clips playing from the slot. He's a really, really talented route runner, and he can catch the football. You look at that and you kind of see a guy who you can move all over the field, and he's going to be more than just a traditional running back.
Let me throw in one more thing here, Kyle, that is also in my column today. It could be that the most important player of this off season, as opposed to of this draft or free agency for the Bears, is Chase Claypool, because they have a number one receiver now in Moore, and Claypool originally, even though it was high in the second round, was drafted to be a number one receiver. In his rookie year, he looked to be on that path, and then his second year didn't go as well, and last year he got traded and he got hurt. But if you have two number ones, or if you have a one and a really good number two in Claypool, and then you get one of the best running backs in the league, and then you can still do a lot for the offensive line in the second, third, fourth round, whatever you want to do, that offense can get better really quick. But if you still have to count on your quarterback to be your best runner, then you've still got more work to do. And I'm not discounting what the Bears already have, but they don't have anybody who looks to project to be what Bijan Robinson does.
I think I said this last week. For positional value's sake, Bijan Robinson is not a great choice at number 9. I won't go as far as to say a terrible choice at number 9 because he is an incredible prospect. But in terms of pure fun, if Bijan Robinson was the pick at number 9, I would absolutely fist pump and go ahead and circle that week 1 game to watch, because I do think that he is a dynamic player. And when you put a player with that dynamic ability in an offense with someone like Justin Fields, what they've done at the wide receiver position and adding more, that'd be a lot of fun to watch. I don't think it's the best use of their resources, but damn, it would be a good time.
It would be fun to watch. I mean, how would you not tune in for that offense? I'd be a little concerned about, if you do that and you take a tackle in the second round, I'd be a little concerned about what's going on with your defense. But that would be good for viewing, certainly, Kyle.
How about
the one thing I would just want to add real quick, guys, is that if I'm right, and I'm wrong more than I'm right, but if I am right, and I have studied this, and he is the best player in this draft, how is getting the best player in the draft at number 9 not the best use of your resources? I think that's why I'm so married to this. It is absolutely the best use of your resources.
I mean, you have to factor in positional. What's the right word for it?
Positional value.
Yeah, like I can find a starting running back for 3 to 4 years in the second or third round or fourth round. Going to have a more difficult time finding that elite edge rusher in the second or third or fourth round. I'm not saying they're not there, but it just, you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, but I just think what people are missing is, you're right. You can find starting running backs, but how many of those starting running backs are going to win games for you? Are going to be the reason that you win football games. And I think Bijan Robinson is going to be that guy. And that's what you're trying to do here.
The thing is, like, you can find a 1,500 total yard running back. To me, it's much harder to find that edge bender, that's going to give you 12 to 15 sacks.
I don't think the statistics would agree with you on that. I mean, they're both hard to find. Is all I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying, we're talking about Ryan Pohl's blue players. That's what we're talking about. Who are the special guys in this draft? We were told yesterday, not by Ryan, but by his assistant, that right now they've got maybe 6 to 8 who they think are blue players. I would bet anything that Robinson is one of them. I would bet anything that Anderson is one of them. And I think there's a very good chance that Miles Murphy is one of them, but one of those 6 to 8 guys is the guy that you want to get at 9, if you stay at 9. And I don't know anybody who would argue that Robinson isn't one of those guys.
I'm getting distracted by T. Sean, did you see this here in the YouTube comments? I'm trying to figure out if I missed something here from a T3P podcast. It's not about 1,500 yards. It's how did you get them? I'm trying to figure out if you're agreeing with me or agreeing with Hub. T3P, give me a little more insight there. Trying to figure out.
We need some context on that comment.
Yeah. See if we can help figure that one out.
I'll answer the question. It's simple, guys. It's about both, obviously. I mean, if you've got a quarterback, a running back who's getting you 1,500 yards, that is a big plus, no matter how he gets them. But if he gets him by making plays that weren't there, by having the unique ability to break a tackle, to make a block, to catch a pass, and a play that you didn't see coming, that is incredibly valuable.
Sean, you got any follow-up thoughts on that here? I'm trying to look through the comments to see if there's anything else that we should hit on.
No, not necessarily. I just, I'll just add that, with Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham running the show over there, I have a hard time seeing them getting behind a first-round running back, especially at number 9. And I know that's, Hub, you were saying the same thing. Like it's not the betting favorite for them to take a Bijan Robinson, while we all seem to agree that would be really fun and he would be a great addition to the offense. I just have a hard time seeing them, Ryan Poles from a Chiefs organization that was using a 7th round rookie in the Super Bowl a couple of months ago, and Ian Cunningham from an Eagles team that hasn't drafted a first-round running back in several decades. I just have a hard time seeing them doing it, even if he is one of those blue players. I don't know if that's the route they're going to go.
Guys, I think I've said this 100 times. I'll say it one more time. I don't think they're going to do it either, for all the reasons the teams aren't doing it. I just wish they would.
Yeah.
And the reason that I do think the Eagles are going to do it is because they value that position and they value the running game more than most teams in the NFL do right now. And they have a real need because of changes that they've made during the offseason. And so I think there's a good chance the Eagles will do it at 10. I still am not optimistic that the Bears would do it at 9.
Sam Rush just had a great comment here along those same lines. Running back's not a premium position. It's a luxury. You need to have a solid roster already. And I think that kind of goes to what you're saying, Hub. I mean, the Eagles obviously have a really good roster at this point. I know they lost Miles Sanders, but they have all the pieces in place. You look back at the one time the Chiefs did draft a first-round running back with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They were picking, I forget if it was 31st, 32nd. Was that the year after they won the Super Bowl? They had
at the end of the first round. Yeah,
they had a good roster in place already, and the Bears aren't there in terms of the overall roster.
Yeah, I don't understand. I get what you're saying. Not you, but our visitor. How can you say running back's not a premium position? That's ridiculous. I mean, it is an absolute priority position. He's probably going to score your most touchdowns. He's probably going to make the most big plays. Yes, it is a premium position. It's just a riskier position to invest high draft choices in these days. That's what we're talking about here. But to say that running back isn't a premium position, I don't want to say anything negative. I just disagree strongly.
I mean, I get why. I believe it was Sam. I know what he's saying when it's not a premium position. Like, I get what you're trying to say, Hub. It certainly has been downgraded by the way teams are able to rotate NFL backs through, and the concept of what's a good way to put it? Tread on the tires, where something along those lines.
Guys, I don't have it in front of me, but I remember writing this a couple months ago when we were getting ready for the playoffs in the Super Bowl. And if you take a look at the playoff teams this year, almost every one of them was amongst the best running games in the NFL. I mean, the position has been devalued in the draft and in free agency because the belief is that there are just less expensive places to get them. But I don't think there is any good coach or GM in the NFL who has devalued the importance of having a good running back. It's how you get them. It's not that they're not every bit as important as they've always been.
I'm going to throw this hypothetical out there for you, Hub. See, you can tell me that it's a stupid question. I'm okay with that. But I know you have Bijan Robinson and Will Anderson at the top of your board, 1-2, and Tyree Wilson is really high up there with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's assume Anderson's gone at 2 or 3, but Wilson was to fall to 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you still saying you would take Bijan Robinson over Wilson? Because I mean, you like Bijan Robinson a little bit more than Tyree Wilson, right? You know what I'm saying? But I'm trying to box you in here a little bit.
I have Robinson as my best player, and I think I redid Wilson to either 4 or 5. I would take Wilson because I think it would be harder to get that kind of player at number 9 than it would be to get a player. You're not going to get Robinson, but you might get somebody close. You might already have somebody close. I mean, I keep forgetting. This is terrible. I apologize. My memory is coming back, but not fast enough. But the number 2 running back last year for the Bears,
Khalil Herbert.
Yeah, Khalil Herbert led the NFL in average yards per carry at 5.7 yards per carry. He had 700 rushing yards. Maybe they think that he's going to be Bijan Robinson this year and take over that position. I don't think so because of his size. He's not a factor as a blocker. He's not a great receiver. But the point is, you can get really good running backs, in the middle and later rounds. You're probably not going to get the future Hall of Fame edge rusher in those rounds. And so if it came down, to Wilson or, Bijan Robinson at number 9, as much as I would hate myself for it, I'd probably have to take Wilson because I think it would be a better pick at that point, because either one would be tremendous value at number
9. Let's see. There was someone in here. Let me see if I can find it here. Dang it. Oh, Esox Angler says, great show, guys. Can't wait until your next broadcast after the draft. Got some good news for you. You don't have to wait until after the draft. We're actually going to be back on Friday, some point there, hopefully Friday morning, with you guys for a little bit to recap the first round and reset day 2. Guys, let's get out of here, though. We're over an hour. Sean, final thoughts, man.
It's going to be exciting. Thursday night's going to be fun. Going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of rookie GMs. Nobody knows what Houston's going to do. This is one of the biggest unknowns heading into the draft, and I feel like it's just going to be a really fun evening, and we're gonna be surprised along the way.
Hub, are you as happy as I am that the Green Bay, the Aaron Rodgers saga is over?
Guys, I made a mistake in a TV show about a year and a quarter ago. I actually didn't make a mistake. I was right about what I said about Aaron Rodgers. I just had no idea that it was going to become the story that it became and have the impact that it had. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He's a 4-time, MVP. I think he's a great quarterback, and the fact that he's out of the division is very good for Bears fans. I have nothing personally against Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure he knows he made a mistake with how he handled the whole COVID thing and what went on at the time. But I also think that the New York Jets overpaid for him and apparently weren't watching tape of the second half of this season, because he's going to turn 89. He's going to turn 69, and he did not play well. The last half of this. I mean, he didn't play badly, but he wasn't Aaron Rodgers the last half of the season. And I don't know why the Jets are so comfortable that he is going to be the guy that they can win a Super Bowl with. We'll see. It'll be interesting. But I wish him nothing but the best. He's one of the great players of all time, and I think it'll be a great story if he can, still play at an All-Pro level.
I was shocked by the compensation, particularly with, I believe it was 65% of snaps and the conditional second rounder goes to a first rounder next year. That seemed, I'm going to go ahead. I thought that was insane.
I'm not risking a first-round draft choice for a 39-year-old quarterback. I don't care who it is.
Particularly when it's tied to just playing snaps.
And I know that Brady at least won a couple Super Bowls, I think, after he turned 39. And but Aaron Rodgers is not Tom Brady. Brady's in a league of his own. Aaron Rodgers is in that next group of all-time great quarterbacks. I just I think that. I think the Jets overpaid for him, but hopefully this year he can come back, and they do have a lot of other pieces that I don't know if they're a Super Bowl contender, but they're a playoff team with him if he can play the way he's played in the past.
I brought it up actually to plug Dan Wuso, staff writer for ShawLocal.com, is a native of the Green Bay area, does some writing on the side about the Green Bay Packers. He actually did a 4-round mock draft for the Green Bay Packers. So if you're a Bears fan, interested to get a perspective of what the Packers are thinking from a Green Bay perspective, go over to shawlocal.com and check that out. And of course, we have all of our positional previews up now. Sean's been working on those over the last month. Hub's got his draft preview column up. We have more content coming your way today. As I said, we'll be back with you guys live on Friday morning here on YouTube and Facebook. If you're on YouTube and you haven't already, hit the like or hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. We really do appreciate it. And once again, go to shawlocal.com. And with that, guys, everyone enjoy the first round of the draft. It's one of my favorite weekends of the year. It's going to be a good time. We'll talk to you guys on Friday. Thanks for joining us today. For Hub Arkush and Sean Hammond, I am Kyle Nabors. Talk to you guys later.